Well, it's the end of the semester, and typically in class, we would be having quite a tea tasting. And I love this time in the semester when we get to really indulge and expand our understanding of some of those stimulating beverages. I couldn't help it to get a little British here and get a little bit dressed up in order to drink some tea and talk to you about all of these wonderful options that we have with us today. When we look at stimulating beverages, for the most part, we're looking for the molecule of caffeine. And caffeine is one of those very interesting molecules. It's meant to discourage herbivores. It's not supposed to encourage us to keep eating or keep chowing on a plant, and yet with humans it's kind of worked to the opposite. But much to the plant's desire, we then propagate the plant and we'll grow that plant like crazy. We'll grow it everywhere we possibly can because caffeine is, of course, addictive. And part of the reason why it's addictive is because of the systems that it is stimulating. So caffeine is an alkaloid, has kind of a bitter taste. It will interact with our cells, and specifically it will stimulate the adrenal glands to dump a whole bunch of adrenaline into our system. So a lot of times what we are thinking is the caffeine response is really just a response to our own adrenaline. Now I tell you this because I know a lot of you out there you enjoy caffeine quite a bit. And if you can understand your caffeine consumption and your caffeine response as being an adrenaline response, this can help you understand a little bit more about how your body is behaving and help you to be able to manipulate your body to do what you need it to do. So a lot of us will drink coffee or drink stimulating beverages before an exam, and that's kind of not the way to do this, right? It'll give you that adrenaline rush, but the problem is that with the adrenaline rush, adrenaline enhances memory. So what you're going to remember is you're going to remember the intensity of taking the exam. You might remember some of the questions on the exam, but it's not necessarily going to help you tremendously with recall. So then knowing that caffeine and adrenaline responses are associated with learning and memory, it would make more sense to drink caffeine or to drink these stimulating beverages while you're studying. That way you have a better chance of remembering things as opposed to using them to get you all hyped up and energized for the actual examination. Do remember that caffeine generally has a half-life of about 2.5 to 3 hours in our body, so it's not going to have long-term effects. The other thing you have to know is that if we are continually consuming caffeine, if we're continually using our adrenaline system, our cells in our bodies start to become less responsive. And so from time to time, you may want to walk back your caffeine consumption. If you drink coffee every day, I would encourage you at the end of the semester, if you have some downtime, to go off caffeine for a couple of days, maybe even for a couple of weeks. Let your body reset, develop a new normal. And then inevitably, when you take that stimulating beverage again, drink some coffee or some soda pop or some tea, your body will respond differently. Anyways, let's get into the enjoyable stuff. One of the most commonly grown plants for caffeine, grown as a stimulating beverage, will be coffee. Now with coffee, the part of the plant that we want the seed. And the seed is inside of a drupe fruit. So to get rid of the exocarp and the mesocarp, those outer layers of the ovary, we're going to need to ferment the fruit after it is harvested. Once you have that fermented fruit and you've got the outer layers gone, you can then get at the seed, you can get at the cotyledons. You take those cotyledons and you roast them. Depending on how you roast them, oh man, that's when you're going to get that intensity of flavor. You take the roasted beans, run them through a grinder, make them into a really fine powder, then that fine powder gets run through hot water. Now, if you start to get really far down the garden path, you may start to look at that chart in the lecture slides for the different aromas and different flavors that different roastings can give you. Lighter roasts will give you more caffeine. Darker roasts, higher temperature. Higher temperatures tend to change the shape of molecules, so darker roasts tend to have less caffeine, but they tend to taste a little bit more bitter and tend to be pretty intense. I didn't start out this crazy. I didn't start out being really picky about the type of coffee that I drank. Gas station coffee was just fine. I really wasn't attentive to all of the different accoutrements and ways that you can make your coffee. But I encourage you at some point to maybe get curious and look at some of these other methods. There's that pour over method where you've got a filter and you dump the hot water over the coffee, and that can give you a different flavor. There's the French press. You have a long cylinder, you put the grounds in there, dump in the water, and then you can plunger it down to keep the grinds, the fine ground coffee seeds from getting into your drink. And then there's this really fun method. This is a Bialetti. These little contraptions go back to the World War, and they are made in Italy. You put all of your grounds in here. You fill up some water in here. Put the two together. Screw the piece on top. Put it on top of the stove or some sort of heat source. We love to take these things with us when we're doing car camping. Why should one compromise your coffee standards just because you're out in the middle of the woods? Anyways, we're coffee snobs here in this house. I'm sorry. I didn't know I would end up this way. You screw it on, get a good tight seal. Now what's going to happen is the heat source is going to heat up the water, turn it into steam. The steam is going to move through the coffee grounds and then push the coffee-flavored liquid out here, accumulating it in the top part of our pot. Really, really fun to watch. Be careful, it will spit at you, and that can be a little bit dangerous. So Bialetti, great way to make some coffee. All of this is very fun and entertaining. Caffeine and these stimulating beverages are definitely luxury items. They may feel like needs, but they're luxury items. So let's take a look at the second most commonly drunk or commonly used plant for its stimulating properties. And that would be tea. Tea, of course, we're going to be using the leaves, and I want to pop open this white tea here. It's a white peony tea. So I wanted to show you the leaves. What I like about this tea is that so many of the leaves are very well preserved, even though it's been dried and is ready to be turned into a stimulating beverage. So if we take a look, I mean, we can see that whole leaf that's been dried in order to make this tea. Now, generally, it's only going to be the first few leaves. We want those tender leaves, and the leaves are going to be put into hot water, and then the hot water will be drunk, and in that hot water we will have caffeine, different caffeine molecule than we have in coffee, but we'll have some caffeine, some theophylline, and some of those tannins. When we look at teas, there are a lot of different types of teas out there. We have the most common black tea, and right now in my house all I've got are these flavored black teas from Tea Source. So this is a nice roasted chestnut. It's got some flavors added to it, but it's got that black tea, the tea leaves that have been fermented, given a little bit of flavor. So the difference between this kind of black tea and some of these pure teas, which I absolutely have fallen in love with, is the amount of fermentation and how long those leaves are allowed to ferment. Now, if you get into pure tea, you're going to discover that some of the pure teas are really super expensive because they have allowed those tea leaves to ferment for so long. And it can have a very, very, very intense flavor. So here are two pure teas that I've been drinking right now. One is a flavored white chocolate, very nice for just the cooler days. And then this pure tea. And I love the fact that Tea Source gives us a description so that we know what we're getting into. So this pure tea is strong yet incredibly smooth with a tingly, spicy quality to the cup. The flavors we're supposed to be getting are peppermint, clove, and licorice root. I don't ever get those very much, but admittedly, I'm not the best when it comes to discerning flavors in tea. So that's what I'm drinking today, is I've been drinking some of this Iron Silk pure tea from Tea Source. If you're new to teas and you're not sure you want to go to the extent of ordering from Tea Source and having it delivered to your house. This Numi brand pure tea is really good as well. It doesn't have some of the fermented flavor, almost woodsy or fungal flavor that you would get from the more intense pures. It is a good way to start to get into pure tea if you weren't quite sure, if you wanted to experiment beyond just the black and green that we tend to see in the store. So the next thing that I would like to show you is the green teas. And when it comes to our green teas, whether it's the true green tea here or a yellow bud green tea, what we are looking at is, again, those first tender leaves, but they have not been allowed to ferment. So we get a very different flavor when we have taken out the fermentation process. Our white peony tea here, I find one of the best green teas I've ever tried in my entire life. It's very light. It doesn't have a lot of that strong grassy flavor that can turn people off from teas. It's really just delightful. A little bit of honey, and it gives me just the right amount of like late afternoon pick me up and perk me up type of green tea. And what would it be talking about green teas if I didn't also talk about matcha? Matcha has a fairly intense flavor. A lot of times it is used in cooking. And when you drink it, do make sure that you are paying attention to the temperature, paying attention to the steeping time. When it comes to tea, the longer we let the tea sit in hot water, the more those tannins will come out and flavor our drink. The tannins tend to have a bitter flavor, and if we leave it in too long, that bitter flavor can really just exacerbate and make the back of your tongue feel just kind of aggressive. So be careful on your steeping times. You don't want it to steep too long. One of the other things that I love about Tea Source is they tell you how long these teas should steep, and then they also tell you the water temperature. Water temperature is really crucial. If you get into tea making, you may find yourself at some point getting all of the equipment that goes with it. Again, I used to drink Lipton tea. I never thought I would end up this way with a cupboard full of teas and all of the doodads that go along with it. So I love these kinds of little teapots with these nice wire racks for steeping this loose leaf tea. And if you end up getting a teapot, you may end up getting a tea cozy too. I mean, I don't know where this ends. I am so far down the rabbit hole. You put the tea cozy around the teapot, keeps the tea warm. You want to make sure your tea is always at the right temperature. So let's talk about those steeping temperatures. If you're just boiling water in a kettle on your stove, you're not going to get a real accurate temperature unless you're sticking the thermometer in. And if you've gotten to that point, you're just going to have to spend the money and get one of these doodads. Now, this thing is just wonderful. If we look up here on the handle, I'm going to try to tip this so that you can read it. Up here on the handle, it's got all the different temperatures. So we've got temperatures for black teas and delicate teas, like our herbal teas, our green teas. And so all I have to do is program into this wonderful little machine what kind of tea it is that I'm making. It gets it bubbling and going. It beeps at me when everything is ready. It is delightful. I just love it. Didn't know I could enjoy tea this much. It really is fun when you get into it. If you've got the time, the energy, and the finances, because it's not always the cheapest. Now, when we talk about teas, we have sort of I think a misnomer, because there's a whole grouping of herbal teas, and herbal teas are just a combination of different plants. Could be the leaves or the flowers, could even be the roots, could be really any part of the plant. But it is not the Camellia sinensis plant. It is not the official tea that we see over here. So what that means is that we most likely, almost 100% of the time, will not have any caffeine in our resulting drink. So we take hot water and run it over, in the case of the chamomile tea here, we're going to run it over the chamomile flowers. Here we have some sleepy time tea, which is a combination of chamomile and some spearmint, and then it's got some vanilla flavoring. And I wanted to give put this suggestion out to those of you who are looking ahead to finals week, getting a little bit nervous. Maybe there's some stress in your life. This tension tamer tea can be very nice if you like the flavor to help alleviate some of that stress that you might be feeling this time of year. But do remember that our herbal teas generally don't contain caffeine. They're just other plant parts that are being used to make a hot beverage. You could also put it over ice and make a cold beverage too. I do want to caution you, if you get into herbal teas or are already there, sometimes herbal teas can be like we saw with our herbal remedies in the medicinal plant unit. We can get some claims that aren't substantiated. People can go a bit overboard regarding how much these teas can work to help with different ailments. So make sure you're looking to primary research if you want to see if these herbal teas will have the effect that they're being advertised to have. And also just to be aware of any contraindications with any conditions that you might have or other medication that you're taking as well. So our third most commonly used stimulating beverage, although most of the time it's not necessarily in beverage form, will be chocolate, and specifically hot chocolate. Oh man, hot chocolate is amazing on a cold night. So in order to make hot chocolate, we're first going to grab a hold of that football-sized fruit. And it's so weird how the cacao tree grows, because it grows in the understory of tropical forests. Similar to coffee, it doesn't like too much rain, doesn't like too little, can't tolerate any cold, likes to live in the mountainous regions where the water will drain through the soils and its feet will never be wet. And then it's going to put its flowers along the trunk, and that's the weird part here to the cacao tree. All those flowers show up, and the trees cannot self-pollinate. So we need to have lots of cacao trees if we're going to get pollination to occur to make that weird and funky fruit. Now, when it comes to classifying the fruit, in the botanical world, there's a lot of debate. Is it a Hesperidium? Is it a Pepo? There's so much debate about how we're going to classify that fruit. We're going to ignore that and go right to the idea that the part that we're after are the seeds. You get a hold of the seeds, you ferment them to get rid of the fleshy bits, and then you dry and roast them. The roasting is going to bring out the flavor that we start to associate with chocolate. Once you have the roasted nibs, those roasted cotyledons of the seed, you are then going to squeeze them, crush them. This allows you to remove the chocolate liquor and the cacao butter. So you take away those things, and now you are left with a product that essentially can be ground up, pulverized, and turned into cocoa powder. So here I've got two different types of cocoa powder. I've got this natural high-fat cocoa powder. And what I really like about this is that it's a lot richer. I don't have to use as much of it. And so I've just found it's much, much, much nicer for giving me that chocolatey flavor, especially when I'm baking. And then when I'm making hot chocolate, I mean, the more chocolate flavor, the better, in my opinion, but not everybody feels that way. There are other types of cocoa out there. This is black cocoa that has an incredibly intense flavor, and they do warn you when you're using this. If your recipe calls for, say, a half cup of cocoa powder, decrease it. Do about 1/4 cup. That's how intense this flavor is. It can be really overwhelming. There is a red cocoa powder as well that has a really nice, rich flavor. It's not as overwhelming as this. It's a little bit better than the high-fat cocoa powder here. Wonderful to use in baking and in making different hot cocoa drinks. But the difficulty is that it does come from King Arthur flour, and they have been sold out now for about a year. And I haven't got my timing right to pick some up. So it's driving me a little bonkers right now. They can't get a hold of that red cocoa powder. But what if we want to make a chocolate bar? Oh man, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take the cocoa powder, add back in the chocolate liqueur, add back in the cocoa butter. We'll add in some vanilla flavor possibly, or milk if we want to make it milk chocolate. We'll add it all back together and then hopefully get this chocolate bar. Now, I just made what is a hugely complex process sound very, very simple. You got to keep everything the right temperature. You can't overprocess it. I mean, chocolate is very finicky. There's a reason why in baking shows, being a chocolatier and being able to mold and manipulate and use chocolate is such a challenging, and it comes with so much like esteem, like so much weight if you are capable of being able to do that. But we don't want to get into all those details. When it comes to chocolate bars, we have seen that eating chocolate can decrease blood pressure. But a couple of things before you run out and start eating a bag of chocolate chips. First of all, you would have to eat an entire bar of chocolate every single day to get any noticeable effects on your blood pressure. And the other thing is that it would have to be really, really high percentage of cocoa. So this is titled, appropriately so, bittersweet, because it is 80% cocoa, and wow, it's pretty bitter. So if you were looking to decrease blood pressure, we've got really good meta-analysis data that shows that green tea, drink a couple of cups every day, that works to decrease blood pressure a little bit better than eating a whole bar of chocolate every single day, especially this high cacao chocolate. That can, and plus eating a whole bar of chocolate can have other side effects, mostly on the waistline. So there has been some data about which of these could have some medicinal benefits. So we keep seeing this overlap where plants can be used for different purposes. Initially, hot chocolate or tea or coffee may look like it's just to get people zipped up and excited and to get at that caffeine molecule. But we look for other things in those in these drinks to see if we could potentially be resolving other situations by consuming these wonderful plant products. Well, that's a good overview of at least the main plants that we consume for stimulating beverages, or consume as stimulating beverages. If you have any questions, if you just want to talk about them, if you want recommendations, please, please, please always email me. Life is too short to drink crappy coffee or crappy tea or to eat cheap chocolate. Make sure to get the good stuff, and I will point you in the direction of the good stuff so that you can enjoy these wonderful, wonderful, luxurious